Good evening. All right, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us. My name is Leslie Dickey, and I'm the Director of Advancement here at the Governor's Academy. And I'm delighted tonight to be joined by our head of school, Peter Quimby, for his fireside chat with alumni. So thanks so much to everyone for being here. We do host these once a year, and it's always a wonderful opportunity for you to hear a state of many things at Govs, a state of our school and of our community, an update on the admission cycle, which is fresh in our minds, having just come out of or just emerging from the April admission season. And also an update on our strategic plan and how we're starting to turn the corner to begin implementing some of our biggest aspirations. So lots to talk about. In addition to the questions that were submitted in advance with your registrations, I welcome you to submit questions along the way. And if you would, please use the Q&A function that is going to be at the bottom of your screen, because the chat is not going to be enabled, and we aren't raising our hand. We're just going to use the Q&A tonight. So thanks so much for your active engagement and participation. And without further ado, I will turn it over to you, Peter.
And I'll go ahead and unmute myself before I start talking. How about that? Thanks, Leslie, and good evening, everyone. It's wonderful to have you joining us, and I'm excited to spend a little bit of time talking with you about what's happening at Govs today, what our year has been like, and as Leslie said, giving you an update on the admission season, and then transitioning into a conversation about our strategic plan. But before we do that, I'm going to tell you something that if you don't already know it, it's because you haven't been on your email all day. It is Gov's Giving Day. Today is Gov's Giving Day. As of when I hit refresh a minute ago, we have 814 gifts toward our goal of 1,000, and we still have just over 1,000 minutes to go. So if you haven't made a gift yet, pause me and go ahead and help to get us across the finish line. It's been a very exciting day so far, and I want to see how far we can push this. As I said a minute ago, and we have some slides to show a little bit later, but I wanted to start by talking a little bit about the year and what the year has been like. The year started with a focus on our strategic plan, and we're going to come back to that later. I was on the road about as much as I would be in any year, because we did regional events sort of in all of the places that we do them. And the reason we sort of packed the fall schedule is that we released our new strategic plan at the end of August. And we really wanted to make sure that we were out sort of socializing the priorities that are in the campaign, helping to explain the themes that are a part of the campaign, and bringing people into the excitement and the energy around what we have planned for the future, because this strategic plan will guide the work of the school and of our board for the next, at least 5 to 7 years. So that was the focus of the fall. As I think know from an email that you would have received from me in early February, our year was then marked by a tragedy. One of our senior students took his life in his dorm room on campus. To say that this was a tragedy is a gross understatement. I've never been through a suicide in any school community that I've been a part of. And the ways in which it sort of tears at the heart of a community is as profound as you could possibly imagine. And as I was reflecting in the first conversation that I had with our student body when we called them together the morning after to share the news, one of the things I said is that the reason things like this hurt so much in a community at Govs is because we are such a close-knit community, that even people who may not have known or been friends with Fafa Jizoko, the student who passed away, um, you still feel the impact of the loss. Um, that's the downside, right? We feel things more deeply because of the nature of our community. The upside is that it's that very close-knit, family-like atmosphere that allows you to get through, not to move, you know, turn away from, but to move through those moments together. And I have been as proud of our school community in seeing the way in which people have come together this spring as I have been in any of my 15 years as head of school. Um, you know, I've seen faculty members who are sort of devastated and grappling with their own grief over the loss of this young man, sort of push through their grief in order to be able to be there for and support students. Um, I've seen the president of, the academy president get up in front of the school on the first morning meeting after this tragedy and talk with students about grief and what it means to move forward together without forgetting, to sort of be able to find a way forward while still honoring the memory of the student who's no longer with us. And I've seen what the students in our winter musical did because we gave them the choice of continuing on with their performance or not. This tragedy happened about 10 days before our winter family weekend, which is when the musical is performed. Um, and, on the one hand, it could have been a lot to ask those students to continue with the intense rehearsals that go into preparing for opening night. On the other hand, we wanted to return to a regular schedule as soon as we possibly could. And so we asked these students, what do you feel that you can do? And they decided that not only did they want to move forward with the performance, and the performance this year was Mamma Mia, which is a show that has an incredible amount of joy and laughter and energy. They felt that they wanted to do this because they felt that a moment like that, a moment of joy and energy and just fun, would be something that was important for the community. And I was just so proud of them for saying, I can work my way through this in order to provide an experience for the community that I feel our community needs. So there have been just moments of deep and profound sadness and moments of incredible pride and joy. As we have moved through the spring, we are into more of a routine. We can celebrate things like the musical. We can celebrate athletic victories. Um, and, we were able to hold prom and have that be, a moment of fun and celebration and joy for our students in the middle of April. At the same time, for some students, moments like prom serve as a reminder, especially for Fafa's friends, that there's someone who's missing, that there's a profound absence that still remains. And that is sort of how our spring has been, right? Returning to normal and finding that there are times when we are pulled back into an awareness of the grief that is still there. And frankly, experts on grief say that it takes a full 2 years to move beyond it and feel like you are sort of fully yourself again. So, prom brought with it joy and challenges. And, I was meeting with a group of primarily seniors today who were very much aware of the fact that commencement is going to be hard for them. Hard because while they're excited to celebrate the culmination of their time at the academy, they know they'll be doing that without their friend. who they very much wish was there with them to celebrate that moment. And so, we have tried to adjust um, the ways in which we are supporting our students, the opportunities that we are giving them for support as we see their needs sort of ebb and flow through the course of the year. So, in many respects, it's been an excellent year, and in one very significant respect, it's been the hardest year that I've ever been through as an educator. Um, so, we are finding ways to move forward. Commencement will be a remarkable celebration of the talents and accomplishments of our students, and it will be tinged with a sense of loss at the absence of Fafa. So that's how I would summarize the year. Leslie, why don't we now sort of move into a recap of the admission year? As most of you know, probably, we send out our admission decisions on March 10th. Students have until April 10th to respond to us. So we're now just sort of a couple of weeks post the end of our admission season. It was in some respects a challenging year from an admission perspective. The good news is that by April 10th, we had put ourselves in a position where meeting our enrollment targets was very much a manageable task. I can tell you that as of yesterday, Michael Keneally, the Dean of Enrollment, said that with students committed and a couple of outstanding waitlist offers that we expect will be accepted. We're right at around 400 students for next year. Our enrollment goal to meet our revenue targets is 406. And so, our hope is that over the course of the month of May, we will, fill those last remaining few openings and head into the summer with a school that is full for the fall. Um, Typically, we sort of look at the final enrollment numbers when we've sort of come to the end of the summer season, but that's where we are. That's where we are at this point in the process. For us, one of the most important moments in the admissions cycle is accepted student days. That's when students who've been admitted to GUBS are invited to come back, spend a day with us on campus, shadow students, meet with faculty and administrators, attend panel presentations, and really get a sense of what it's like, what it would be like for them to be a member of the school community in the fall. We have a tremendous amount of success with those events. And this year, in a way that was consistent with past years, we did incredibly well with the yield on that subset of students who came back. And so, as you can see on the slide, we had 115 families who visited us over the course of 2 days. 72 of those families elected to enroll at GOVs, and that's, as you see, a 63% yield on that group. The other thing that I'll say about the admissions cycle, and this is in response to one of the questions that came through in advance, and the question was, how do we keep interest in private school strong when the cost of college, even with financial aid, has gotten so high? This is the question that all schools, frankly, are asking right now. Not only is the cost of a college education high, the cost of a secondary school education is high as well. Then we combine that with what we know is a sort of the so-called demographic cliff. Nationally, the number of students enrolled in high school will continue downward for another several years. And so, between questions of affordability and questions of the pool of potential candidates, these are challenging times for schools. And I would say that we're dealing with this in two different ways. One, we're trying to do everything we can to expand the pool of students who are looking at govs, right? And so we have taken some very strategic steps to do that work in a focused way over the course of the next few years. And our goal, frankly, is to go from around 1,000 applications a year, which is where we've been 1,000 to 1,100 over the last few years, and to increase that number by as much as 50%, to get that up into the 1,500 applications area, to ensure that we continue to have a strong and healthy group of qualified applicants from which we can choose. The other piece of that equation, though, is trying to address questions of affordability. We do that by, working to ensure that we are operating as efficiently as we possibly can. And we do it by trying to increase the resources that we have available for financial aid. That was a huge priority in the With True Courage campaign that we wrapped up on June 30th of 2024. And as you'll see a little bit later in the presentation, it will remain a priority in the fundraising work that will follow as we seek to garner the resources necessary to implement the vision that's articulated in our new strategic plan. One of the things that I do during accepted student days is talk a little bit about some of our students. Typically, I talk about a couple of different seniors and talk about how their journeys through GOVs have been sort of compelling or remarkable in some ways. This year, I talked about 5 students. So right now, I want to share the stories of 3 of them verbally, and then 2 of those students we also profiled with brief videos that we released during the admission yield season, that March 10th to April 10th period. And so I'll describe 3 of them, and then Leslie can play the videos for us when we get to that point. So the first student that I talked about was Molly Vanna. Molly is a senior, and she is in the spotlight. She's a very strong athlete, so much in the spotlight that opposing teams will often design their entire defensive strategy around stopping her. But Molly's the kind of athlete who never seeks the spotlight. And so the way she would most often deal with the focus on her was to use that as an opportunity to free up her teammates. And when they had the opportunity to score, no one was cheering louder for them than Molly was. She's the kind of leader whose kindness allows the students around her to grow. But Molly is perhaps best known on our campus and internationally, as it turns out, for her infectious enthusiasm and her kindness. I had the opportunity to be in Seoul, Korea with Leslie in March and met with a student who had been admitted to GOVs for the fall. And when I sat down and talked with her about how she found out about GOVs and what she enjoyed about her campus visit, she said she most remembered her tour guide. And she said that this tour guide was the best tour guide she had at any of the schools that she visited. And I asked her who it was, and she, of course, said it was Molly Vanna, which did not surprise me in the least. Molly is part of the foundation of connection that really sort of enervates our community and makes it feel so special. Molly will continue to pursue excellence at Harvard next year, where she will play not only soccer, but also lacrosse for Harvard. So 2-season D1 varsity athlete. The next student that I talked about was Theo Anderson. I mentioned earlier our Academy president. Theo came to us as a 9th grader who was very studious. He connected very well with students in his dormitory, but I don't think any of us who came to know 9th grade Theo almost 4 years ago could possibly imagine the ways in which he would become the consummate connector of people on our campus. He was a 2 year star on what I would refer to as the Mighty Mighty Thirds basketball team. But he hung up his sneakers after sophomore year when, after the director of our winter musical heard him perform at a karaoke night, he encouraged him to audition for the winter musical the following year, which he did. He landed a part. And this year, in his senior year, he took on the lead role of Sky in Mamma Mia. Theo also serves as a proctor now in one of our ninth grade boys' dorms. And of course, he was elected our academy president last spring. One of the things that has impressed me most about Theo over the course of his career at Govs has been his leadership and his ability to connect well with all students on campus and to bring students together as a result. He really is an extraordinary young leader. And it's not just Govs that has recognized the talents that Theo has. He's been awarded one of the most prestigious scholarships in higher ed. So he will be pursuing his college studies at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill as a Morehead Cain Scholar. Just an extraordinary accomplishment, a very coveted prize for any high school senior to win. The last student that I talked about was Latifa Fazulayeva, who came to us as an outstanding student from the New Jersey Seeds program. And she came to us with a deep passion for biology, a passion that she has been able to pursue through our SMART Team program. The SMART Team is a winter afternoon program where students identify some kind of protein that they want to work with, and they present their research at the National Conference of the Molecular Biology and Biochemistry Association in the spring. But part of the reason that Latifa came to Govs was because she was attracted by the range of our arts programs. And at the start, Latifa was literally behind the scenes as she sort of immersed herself in our technical theater program. But over time, she found her stage voice and emerged from the shadows and was not only one of the lead actresses in our fall drama production, she actually directed the play, which is an unusual opportunity for a student to have at the high school level. Her connections with others gave her the confidence to try something that was new for her and discover a talent that she didn't know that she had when she came to Govs. The other two students that I talked about that day are Isabella Gomez and Trip Schuwerk, and I will let you learn about them through the videos that we produced for the yield season.
When I arrived on campus as a Govs Plus scholar, my first reaction was, wow, this is a really big campus.
Govs Plus is a summer academic enrichment program that we hold here at the Governor's Academy with kids from Lawrence who are academically motivated.
Throughout the program, I got to know a lot of the faculty, a lot of the students here. I knew that Govs was the place for me.
So good to see you.
Ms. De La Guardia has been another mother figure to me. As senior class president, I would never have thought that I would go for it. She was the first one to tell me to take that risk.
Isabella is a resilient student who is a true leader. She has many, many roles, and that's not easy to navigate as a senior when you're applying to colleges, when you have a lot of other things in your mind, but Isabella doesn't miss a beat.
The different learning styles that I've learned at Govs are definitely hands-on learning and seminar-based learning style. EP Gov is definitely a class that I didn't think that I would take, but probably is one of my favorite classes that I'm taking this year. I think Govs has pushed me out of my comfort zone by allowing myself to try new things.
Eyes back.
Track and field was never on my radar coming to Govs. I feel very lucky being able to be captain this year.
Isabella will go to great places. She has the qualities to be someone really important and a change maker.
My plan is to go into STEM after I graduate. Through Govs, I definitely had experiences where it's helping the greater community, and I think I want to continue doing that once I graduate.
Outstanding. And now we'll hear about Trip.
Govs does an amazing job of letting kids try new things. They're not afraid to make mistakes. They're not afraid to try something new.
Transitioning my junior year into Govs academics was definitely different because it's a very hands-on environment.
I'm Trip's dorm parent, lacrosse coach. I see him multiple times a day on campus. I would describe Trip academically as intellectually curious. He is someone, as being a charismatic individual, thrives in small group discussions.
Discussion-based and hands-on learning has helped me grow as a student in ways I couldn't really imagine. It kind of gets me excited to go to class every day. Being on a team at Govs is like just being a part of another community. Mr. Westner, he was a big support in my recruiting for lacrosse. He knows me the most as who I am as an athlete, but also a student and just a person. Coming in my junior year, I already knew, obviously, my twin brother, so I kind of just followed his lead for the first few weeks. Where I felt like I found my community the most was definitely the dorm. I like to describe it as one big sleepover. Coming to Govs, it's kind of just showed me how much support I have to become a much better person, athlete, and student in the future.
I think his ability to be well-rounded is going to serve him really well. And I'm excited to personally watch him grow as an individual. It's one of the most rewarding things as a teacher and coach that I get to do.
Excellent.
Excellent. Thank you, Leslie. I don't think there's any better way to sort of talk about what's happening on campus today and the value of the Govs experience than to talk about our kids and having you hear a little bit from them about their experience themselves. Let's transition now, Leslie, to talking about the strategic plan. For those of you who may not have attended this conversation last April, I want to spend just a minute sort of talking about where this work began. And then on the next slide, we'll talk about where this is heading as we look to the future. So the plan has its roots in self-study and work and research that dates back to the fall of 2022. The real focused work on putting all of the data and research and themes into a written document took place during the 24-25 academic year. We developed the plan, brought it to the board for endorsement, and then took last spring and summer to take that work and develop it into the kinds of collateral materials that I hope you all have seen. The expression of the plan that's on our website, the video describing the plan that's on our website, and then the print piece that we mailed in the fall in conjunction with Governors, the Archon magazine. I want to take a minute here just to sort of highlight the name of the plan, because I think it's important. Force of Nurture. That is a name that is sort of intentionally counterintuitive, right? When we think about the word, did I say nurture or did I say nature? Leslie, I'm looking. I meant to say
nurture. You said
I
nurture.
said it right. Okay, I said it right. Sometimes I get thrown off because, we came up with this before the Weather Channel doubled down on force of nature. The reason it's counterintuitive is that when we think of the word nurture, we don't necessarily think of power. And yet it's the nurturing that happens in our community that I believe this that sort of connecting that happens in our community that leads to giving our students an ability to achieve excellence. I believe that there's real power in nurture, and so this the name for the plan is very intentionally counterintuitive or provocative. Let's jump to the next slide, Leslie. Um, worked over the course of last year in the summer to roll out the strategic plan, which is what we did in the fall. And so the regional events that I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar were all sort of oriented around rolling out the plan, spreading the word, engaging people in conversations about where we're headed as a school. And as all of that has been happening, we have been laser focused on implementation of the plan, right? We are committed to making sure that this is not a strategic plan that we write and sort of, pat ourselves on the back and say, it's great, we've got a new plan, and it sits on a shelf someplace collecting dust. And so we have, over the course of this year, developed a pretty sophisticated dashboard where we have identified implementation plans for every action item that is in the strategic plan, created milestones, and so we are holding ourselves accountable and measuring our progress toward achieving the goals that we have identified. Some of those things that are in the plan we can implement with no additional resources, right? We can, and I'll describe some of those things to give you some examples in just a minute. Other elements of the plan we will only be able to achieve if we identify additional resources in order to make them happen. And so part of the work that we're doing this year is transitioning the strategic plan or converting the strategic plan into what will become the case for the next capital campaign. And so as we move into the summer and then into the fall of 26, we will begin sort of testing those campaign priorities with donors to see what in there resonates with people. And based on that feedback, the Board of Trustees will set a working goal for the next campaign, and we will be out again, inviting people to join us in helping us realize this vision that we have articulated for the future of the school. The other thing we'll be doing as part of that is a survey of all alumni to get feedback from alumni about the priorities that we've identified. One of the sort of sources of data that went into the creation of the plan was a survey that we did of alumni, a couple of years ago when we were building it. Now that it's there, we want to sort of get more feedback from folks around, how they view the priorities that we have articulated. And then, we will refine our goals as a result of that feedback and move into the leadership phase of the capital campaign. Let's go to the next slide, Leslie. So what I'd like to do now is take a minute to give you some examples of the work that we're doing in each of the pillars that are in the strategic plan. There are 3 pillars to give you a sense of the kinds of things that we're working on. And so our first pillar is cultivating academic opportunities. And we talk about a number of academic initiatives in there. I just want to talk about 2 of them tonight. Earlier in the fall, our faculty voted to adopt what we call the CONNEXT program. CONNEXT stands for the Knowledge and Excellence Transcript, as a method of assessing our 9th graders in their first semester at GOVS. So as part of this effort, 9th graders will no longer get grades in the first semester. They will get written feedback, and the goal is to help them learn from their first days at GOVS how to focus on their own learning for the sake of learning, right? If students are getting a letter grade and measuring their progress based on their level of satisfaction with their grade. I got an A, I'm good. I got a B, ooh, I guess I better figure out how to get an A. We're sort of missing the point, right? Because we want a ninth grader who's getting an A to be thinking, okay, this is what I did really well. As I continue to grow as a writer, these are the things that I need to be focused on to continue to advance in my learning. And that's what we want to encourage the conversation among our students and between students and their teachers to be focused on rather than, why did I get an A minus instead of an A? We want them to focus on progress. Now, this is not to say that students will sort of end the semester having no sense of where their academic performance is. Right? Part of this is letting them know, if you were getting a grade, it would be, you'd probably be in this kind of range, because we don't want students to get their first grades back in second semester, and they thought they were doing the best work ever, and they've got a C plus. But it's an effort to sort of refocus the conversation on growth and learning. The other thing that we talk about in the strategic plan is looking for opportunities to distinguish govs for the nature and quality of our academic program. This strategic plan calls on us to sort of make an even deeper investment in place-based and experiential learning. And so, that is sort of all over the plan. But part of what we're doing is taking workshops that we have been offering for our own faculty over the course of the last several years and starting to sort of publicize those more broadly and invite faculty from other institutions into those conversations with us so that govs will become known, not just regionally, but I believe nationally, as a leader in place-based and experiential learning. And so this August, we have a workshop that we will be offering to teachers from other schools. There was a question that came in before the webinar about how we advance our position nationally. That's part of it. Part of it is encouraging our faculty and administrators to get out and talk at national conferences about the work that we're doing. We need to be less humble, I believe, as a school in talking about the outstanding work that we're doing, and being confident that we're doing things that other schools can learn from and be ready to share those ideas with others. Let's go to the next slide. The second pillar is nurturing our community, and part of that initiative calls on us to build and renovate new wellness spaces. So one of the first things that we did at the start of this academic year was appoint a health and athletics task force. That group has spent sort of the fall and into the winter visiting health facilities and athletic facilities on other campuses, and has been sort of taking the observations that they have made in those visits and using those observations to form some conclusions about what we have the potential to develop here at Govs. There is a significant focus on wellness in this plan. Wellness as defined sort of very comprehensively, right? So we're talking about physical health, we're talking about recreational fitness, about mental health, nutrition, sleep hygiene, social media use, right? If we want our students to excel, we need them to be fundamentally healthy in all areas of their lives. We believe that by building a new athletic facility that is also focused on health and wellness, we can pull all of those initiatives together in one space and help students think in a comprehensive way about what health and wellness mean. We are at the point where we are actively looking for donors to help us fund work with an architect so that we can move into the strategic design phase of this planning and begin moving forward sooner rather than later with an active fundraising effort to build a new facility. Last pillar. We created one other task force that's related to the work of our third pillar, deepening our sense of belonging, and that was the task force that I mentioned earlier in the presentation about focusing on financial aid. During the With True Courage campaign, we increased the resources that we have allocated to financial aid by $20 million, which was a much needed investment in the commitment that we have made over time to funding and supporting our students. And that emphasis will only increase as we move into the next campaign. So we are, asking ourselves fundamental questions about whether we are underwriting our current commitment to financial aid, whether we are expanding that commitment, and looking at all of that within the context of our long-range financial plan. Ultimately, the goal is to be able to say yes to more of the students who have earned a spot in a governor's classroom, and not to be at the point that we're in frequently in the spring, where we are saying, boy, we'd love to have this student on our campus. We'd love to have the student be a member of our community, but we've run out of financial aid resources, and so we're not able to offer them a spot. So that's a long-term challenge that we're facing, but we made good progress in the last campaign. I'm optimistic that we'll make even better progress in the next campaign, and that's the final pillar. So I am going to pause there and invite your questions. I saw a question. I peeked when we were watching the videos and saw that there was a question from Kevin. It's great to have you with us tonight. Kevin was asking about a shift that we made a couple of years ago from having, and sort of, depending on when you attended Govs, you've seen different models, right? I think for a long time we've had ninth graders in one dorm. There was a period of time where we had all ninth graders together, all 10th graders together, and then upper class dorms, juniors and seniors. Several years ago, we moved away from that. So now we have ninth grade dorms and upper class dorms. I think this is a transition that has gone fairly well. We have tried to sort of concentrate the 10th graders in those dorms so that we can, sort of pay attention to where there might be a different set of developmental needs among those students. But I think the transition there has gone well.
Great. Peter, we have another question in the Q&A that sort of harkens back to your comments about our academic pillar and the initiative around Connext. This is from an alum who's really excited about the idea and inspired by the idea of no grades during the first semester of freshman year. I'm curious to know a little bit more about maybe the methods or the criteria, or kind of how do you do that, particularly for someone who might be a late bloomer?
Yeah. So, in some ways, it's most helpful for someone who might be a late bloomer, or most helpful for someone who comes to Govs from a middle school that may not have been as rigorous as the academic demands are here, because it provides an adjustment period and an opportunity to sort of figure out sort of where they are before there's a grade that's sort of stamped on a transcript that is unchangeable. So the way that we do it is through the use of rubrics, right? Now, lots of teachers use rubrics, but when you're not assigning grades, the rubrics, I think, need to be more in depth. They need to be clearer. But rubrics force a conversation between a teacher and students about what mastery looks like, and how you can continue to grow, because it it breaks down expectations into elements of an assignment that can be assessed and gives students, I think, a better and clearer way to think about sort of what they have mastered and where they have opportunities to continue to grow. So I think that for a late bloomer, it's actually an even better transition into sort of the rest of their career at Govs.
Fantastic. We have another question here. So we commented quite a bit on the state of admission this year and yield and some of the highlights coming out of that process. There's some curiosity as well about attrition and sort of what that looked like this year, or sort of maybe what the state of that is at Governors.
Yeah. Attrition has been interesting over the last couple of years because we're seeing attrition coming from a couple of sources that we haven't seen in the past. So we lost a couple of students early in the year, where I might say that we hadn't necessarily gotten all of the information that we might have liked to have had in the admission process. And students struggled in ways that, once we sort of better understood their background, made a little bit more sense. And so in a couple of cases, students actually sort of, decided to withdraw because this was clearly not a place where they were going to find success. We've had very little disciplinary attrition. There are two other kinds of attrition that have sort of cropped up over the last couple of years. Both of them are related to athletics. So we've had, in a couple of instances, a student sort of come in and say, because I didn't X, make varsity, garner the kind of playing time that I expected to have when I was coming in. I'm going to withdraw from Govs. In a couple of instances, in the middle of a school year. We've not seen that in my time at Govs before now, and I think it's a product of a couple of things. I think it's in part a result of the increased emphasis that many families are placing on athletics as a mechanism for increasing college placement outcomes, right? That maybe I can get into a school that's above the level I would have been able to achieve academically on my own because of my athletic prowess, and that sophomore and junior year are the critical periods of time for that. By the way, I will say this is not a phenomenon that is unique to Govs. As I meet with heads and ADs from around the ISL, what we're experiencing is very much what other schools are experiencing as well. The other thing that's been new over the past couple of years is a fundamental shift in the way students access college hockey. Most specifically, D1 hockey. The changes in the NIL rules, name, image, likeness, that allow students to earn money at the collegiate level has opened up sort of the junior leagues in Canada. Those students who didn't used to be eligible to play in the NCAA because they made some money can now do that. And so the pool has expanded significantly. And as a result of that, college hockey coaches are sending very different messages to high school students about what their best pathway is to college hockey. I find this, I'll be, between me and the camera, I'll be totally candid with you. I think this is deeply unfortunate and a disappointing turn of events when academic institutions, some of them very high caliber academic institutions, are sending a message to high school students that they'd be better off to leave their high school, play in the juniors, where they're essentially, in correspondence school, because that's the best way to, playing D1 hockey, sometimes even in the Ivy Leagues. And so we lost last summer in August two of our best hockey players, whose families loved Govs, really wanted them to stay at Govs, but felt that if they wanted to sort of chase this dream, they needed to take the advice they were getting from college coaches and pursue a different pathway. That's a new form of attrition for us, and again, to my mind, a pretty disturbing one.
I'm looking at the time. I do have one more question in the queue, and if another one pops in, we might just have time for two. But this question comes in from one of our younger alumni who's living in the Southwest, is in a position where he has garnered, some relationships with private schools out there. Always looks back fondly on his time here at Govs as an opportunity to meet students from all over the United States and the world, and just starting to get really curious about maybe what efforts or how intentional are we being about opening new doors, particularly in the West, and sort of the state, of our boarding community as it relates to geographic diversity.
Yeah, this is a significant priority for us. So when I mentioned earlier that we were sort of, looking at strategic ways of opening the funnel, would be the sort of admission term for it. One of the things that we're doing is thinking about how to break into new markets. This is not new, but we're thinking about it in a different way. So, for example, schools can buy lists of students who've taken the SSAT, the Secondary School Admission Test. Most frequently, what schools would do is say, I want, students in, these grades who've said that they're interested in boarding school. What we're looking to do is, one, buy lists of younger students, right? We want, the students who've taken the SSAT because they're in a gifted and talented program, or, trying to access a pre-prep program, so that we can start getting Govs on their mind as a high school option earlier in their thought process about where they think they might like to go for high school. That's one thing we're doing. The other thing that I want to see us do is not just by the names of the kids who are interested in boarding school, right? I think we also, particularly as we're outside, our core market, look for opportunities to say, have you thought about boarding school, right? If a family is taking the SSAT, if a student's taking the SSAT and they're interested in independent school, right, they're placing a premium on education. And the number of times I hear in an admission cycle from parents that, this was entirely my child's idea. We didn't go to boarding school. We didn't know about this, but, our child found out from, a neighbor or, someone who graduated the year ahead of them that boarding school was a thing. They did the research, they looked it up, this was their idea, right? We should be seeding those kinds of ideas. And we, we can analyze available data to identify promising markets, right? Where are there people, families, where there's a level of educational attainment that is suggestive of, the kind of demographic that might be looking for boarding school. And so that's sort of how we will begin targeting folks out of region. The other thing we can do is continue to develop relationships with community-based organizations. I mentioned New Jersey Seeds earlier. There's the White Foundation and Oliver Scholars, and sort of as we enter new markets, to look for opportunities to work with programs who've already identified really talented kids, and they've sort of begun the work of encouraging them to look at boarding schools as a way out of typically an educational market that might really limit the potential or options of those kids. So there are a bunch of things that we can do, and we're sort of laser focused on that work.
Terrific. Well, that brings us probably to our conclusion for this evening. Thank you again
Hold on just one second, Leslie.
Okay, we're going to offer an update.
860, 140 to go, folks.
60. All right. We're getting
All
very
your
close.
classmates.
Awesome. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, everyone, for joining us and taking time out this evening to connect. Go Govs, and thanks for keeping in touch.
Great. Thank you, everyone.